Hello and welcome to Newswire. Now, Kulbhushan Jadhav, a 48-year-old Indian citizen, was arrested on March 3, 2016 in the Balochistan province of Pakistan, having illegally and secretly entered Pakistan from Iranian territory. A Pakistani military court charged the spy of espionage and terrorism and sentenced him to death in April 2017. Jadhav, in a confessional video, which we will be showing you clips from, said he was a commander in the Indian Navy working with India's Research and Analysis Wing, which is India's primary foreign intelligence agency. He was charged for killing 1,345 Pakistanis and injuring 7,500 people, and costing Pakistan to the tune of $3 billion in lost business, bad perception, affecting terrorism, affecting exports and imports, and many other factors. Now, Pakistan states that Jadhav had a funding of $500 million from India to conduct terrorist activities within Pakistan's borders. Now, India denies all these statements, and it claims that Commander Jadhav was a retired naval officer and a businessman who was kidnapped from Iran and moved the International Court of Justice in May 2017 against this verdict. In May 18, 2017, the ICJ had restrained Pakistan from executing Jadhav till adjudication of the case. The ICJ will hold public hearings on the case from February 18th onwards in The Hague, and both Pakistan and India will present their arguments before the top UN court, which was set up after World War II to resolve such international disputes. First, let's play a video clip from his confession where he talks about who he is.
I am Commander Kulbhushan Jadhav, number 4155 Zulu. I am a serving officer of the Indian Navy. I am from the cadre of engineering department in the Indian Navy, and my cover name was Hussain Mubarak Patel, which I had taken for doing some intelligence gathering for the Indian agencies. I joined the National Defence Academy in 1987, and I subsequently joined the Indian Navy in January 1991, and I was commissioned into the Indian Navy and subsequently served in the Indian Navy till around 2001 December. I am still a serving officer in the Indian Navy, and will be due for retirement by 2022 as a commissioned officer of the Indian Navy.
Retiring as a commissioned officer, clearly stating his connection to the Indian Navy and that he is not a retired officer, as India states. A key point that Pakistan raises to counter the argument from India, who claims that Jadhav had retired from the Indian Navy prior to his arrest in Pakistan, implying that he was not on active duty with the Indian forces and in fact had stated that Jadhav was a private businessman living in Iran. Now, India hasn't yet provided any evidence to prove these claims. What India has not denied or given an explanation for is his official Indian passport, which is issued under an assumed Muslim name of Hussain Mubarak Patel, on which he was and has entered and exited India some 17 times. Any explanation on how a serving naval commander can travel like this under a false name hasn't been made yet by India. So what was he doing in Pakistan's southwest province? Let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
I commenced intelligence operations in 2003 and established a small business in Chabar in Iran. As I was able to achieve undetected existence and visits to Karachi in 2003 and 2004, and having done some basic assignments within India for RAW, I was picked up by RAW in 2013 end. Ever since, I have been directing various activities in Balochistan and Karachi at the behest of RAW and deteriorating law and order situation in Karachi. My purpose was to hold meetings with Baloch insurgents and carry out activities with their collaboration. These activities have been of criminal nature, these have been of anti-national, terrorist, leading into the killing of or maiming of Pakistani citizens also. I realized during this process that RAW is involved in some activities related to the Baloch liberation movement within Pakistan and the region around it.
You hear him talking about the Baloch Liberation Army, which is basically a militant organization. It's operating in sparsely populated and super underdeveloped areas of Pakistan, mainly Balochistan, and also in neighboring Afghanistan. Now, it has been identified as a terrorist organization by Pakistan, and it has this militant organization, its sole purpose or agenda is to carry out attacks against the state and the armed forces of Pakistan. Pakistan has blamed the BLA for being an Indian proxy, for creating disruption and instability within its borders. Now, Jadhav in his confession also explains how BLA's anti-state activities were funded by India's spy agency.
There are finances which are led into the Baloch movement through various contacts or various ways and means into the Baloch liberation. And the various activities of these Baloch liberation and the raw handlers go towards activities which are criminal, which are anti-national, which can lead to maiming or killing of people within Pakistan. And mostly these activities were centered around of what I have knowledge is of ports of Gwadar, Pasni, Jivni, and various other installations which are around the coast, damaging to the various other installations which are in Balochistan.
Now, as the International Court of Justice begins its hearings of both sides, today we will be talking about what is the legal case against Kulbhushan Jadhav, the allegations from either side, and how can we expect this case to move forward, affecting from its outcome already splintered relations between these two neighboring countries. And now let me introduce our guests. From the Islamabad studios, we are joined by former Ambassador Mr. Ghalib Iqbal, and here in the Lahore studios, we have defense analyst with us, Brigadier Imran Malik. Thank you for joining us here on Newswire. I'll start with you, Mr. Iqbal. When we talk about this case, it is essentially a consular access case. What does the Vienna Convention, where does it come in, and what does it say regarding consular access when the prisoner in question is a terrorist?
I think looking at the Vienna Convention without looking at the diplomatic or the Vienna Convention, which is applicable to the consular agents and diplomatic agents, this case is a bit different from that, because here we have a person who was arrested on the charges of espionage, who was arrested on the charges of terrorism, and this gentleman has been involved in a number of terrorist acts within the territory of Pakistan. It does not fall under Vienna Convention. People say that it falls under Article 36, but I believe that whenever any national of a foreign country is arrested, yes, we can provide the consular access to them. But then we have to see the background of the whole case. In this particular case, actions which were detrimental to our national security were taken by the Indian commander and his friends and his comrades. And it's important that Pakistan looks at it differently, and even more important that the world should look at it more differently. What all is going to happen in the International Court of Justice is 4 days of hearing, 1 day Pakistan, India, Pakistan, India, Pakistan, India, Pakistan. And in that sequence, after 4 days, the ICJ is going to convey the decision probably by May or June, somewhere around that time. I don't think so that giving consular access to Commander Kulbhushan should be a problem for Pakistan. But before that, we need to ensure one thing, that the person who has been accused and who has been convicted by the court should be treated as a terrorist, as a foreign terrorist who has been performing terrorist acts over here, either with the help of our people or their people.
Right. And so, Brigadier Imran, this is where the confusion generally comes in terms of when the ICJ gets involved. It draws a line between whether this is that they do not arbitrate in cases of where there's a criminal case. Could you define for us where exactly does this case stand, and what do they have jurisdiction over?
You see, this is precisely the point. The Vienna Convention on Consular Relations actually covers all those personnel who come from one country and go to another country. But Pakistan's point of view is that it covers only those people who enter the country legitimately. And they come through a port of entry, they show a passport, they identify themselves, they have a visa, and then they come in. But where Kulbhushan Jadhav has come into play is that he's come from Chabahar. He's entered Pakistan illegally. He has fostered terrorism, terrorist attacks. He's established spy rings. He has subverted Pakistan's writ in Balochistan and in Karachi. And he has, by and large, worked to the detriment of Pakistan and its peoples. So Pakistan's point of view is that Article 36 of the Vienna Conventions does not apply to spies and to terrorists. It applies to legitimate personnel or legitimate visitors who come through their normal diplomatic channels or normal legal channels. So that is a very strong point of view. The other things are that Pakistan has captured him from Pakistan territory in Mashkil, Balochistan. He was carrying a false passport under the name of Mubarak Hussain Patel, and he's still a serving officer of the Indian Navy. And let me make one thing very clear, that in normal circumstances, a serving officer of the armed forces can be employed by the intelligence services of that country for such operations. So he's established himself in Chabahar as a small businessman, and operating out of that cover business that is established, he's moved into Balochistan and into Karachi. And he's, as we've said, he's confessed that he's been doing all this. So after having seen all this, after having caught him on Pakistan's soil and his confessional statement, I do not think there is any doubt left in anyone's mind that he is here for criminal activities. Secondly, the Indians have been talking about he being tried by a court-martial, and they've not been given access to him. They've not been given a charge sheet that was presented to him, and they've not been allowed to arrange a defense counsel for him. However, what Pakistan has said, and that is true, that he has been charge sheeted within the stipulated time as per our law. He has been given a defending officer, who's a law qualified officer, and he has been given all the chances. But you see, the Indians are missing out one point. The ICJ can only adjudicate on the consular access. They have no jurisdiction on saying whether Kulbhushan Jadhav has committed a criminal act or not. That will remain the purview of the Pakistani courts.
Come to you, Mr. Ghalib. About the ICJ having at least the power to call for a stay over Pakistan's carrying out the death sentence, because what was the reason behind that? If you could explain the law a little bit on this. Was it because they had irrefutable evidence, India, in case of Jadhav not being a spy? What was the basis that they were able to call for a stay?
There is irrefutable evidence that a person is a spy from an enemy country. And we not only have his passport, which was using a fake name, but we have also collected and correlated the acts of terrorism he has been performing in the country. So I think beyond this, if this had been a case, if a hypothetical situation, if it wasn't Pakistan or Pakistan's location was in another country, in another continent, I think any court in the world is going to convict the spy for the punishment he has received in Pakistan. But since the Pakistan and India situation, it's different. Pakistan and India, they are trying to manage the relationship in a very difficult manner. And this being one of the cases, I think this is very clear, open case. There should be no legal issues beyond the consular access. I don't see anything, because ICJ is not going to give the decision on any criminal charges. And we will have the binding, because ICJ is an organ of the United Nations, and the Security Council is responsible for the implementation of ICJ decisions. Beyond that, I don't think so, because I don't see Kulbhushan Jadhav leaving Pakistan either in the near future or in the distant future because of the crimes he has committed in our country.
Okay. Let me just bring in this news that we are getting, that there's ambush on an FC in Balochistan, and this comes at a very critical time. As we're getting more details of the report, we'll convey those to you. But just speaking, Brigadier Imran Malik, on this timing of the situation, we heard Prime Minister Modi threaten Pakistan essentially over the incident that took place in Kashmir just a few days back, that they would take a serious, look on and reaction to Pakistan, blaming them essentially, and then we're talking about a very key case that is going to start from tomorrow in the ICJ of an arrest of a spy also originated from Balochistan. Do you see some kind of connection here, relevance?
I think this is a very critical point actually, which you pointed out right now. You see, there are very many facets to the timing of this Pulwama attack. Number one is Mr. Modi's election campaign. Second is the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to Pakistan. Third is this ICJ hearing that we are discussing in The Hague tomorrow. And then we have the US and Taliban meeting that may take place in Islamabad very soon. And there are, and then obviously, but the most important point is this Kulbhushan Jadhav hearing that takes place tomorrow. And the FATF meeting that is again taking place, and in which they will decide whether to put Pakistan in the grey list or in the black list or whatever. So the timing of this this attack in Pulwama is very critical to analyze.
Right.
Now, what you've just told us about that attack in Balochistan, the terrorist attack, I think that is again intended to put pressure on Pakistan, and this is again intended to divert attention away from the Crown Prince's visit, which is about to start right now, I think, in a few moments from today. And this again proves, and it goes beyond any doubt now, that the Indians, that the RAW has its tentacles in Balochistan, and that whenever they want to convey a point or a message, they can utilize them. They did that against the Chinese consulate in Karachi, and they're doing that even now. So that reinforces Pakistan's point of view that Kulbhushan Jadhav was a master spy who had established himself in Chabahar. He had created a spy network, and he was, and their spy and terrorist network, and he was then conducting all these various acts of terrorism, espionage, subversion, and sabotage in Balochistan and in Karachi.
And here, let me welcome Mr. Ali Tahir. He's a law expert. Let me ask you this, Ali, if you could shed some light on the legal aspects of this. Now, there was also an agreement that was signed between Pakistan and India in 2008 that basically gave express agreement, which basically gave access in case of consular access in case of such a situation. But it was stated in the documents that on its merits. Now, if you could expand a little on that what would that entail, and would that apply, and how would it apply in Jadhav's case?
First of all, thank you, Alia, for having me over on the show. Basically, all the parties that are parties to the Vienna Convention have to go and implement the Vienna Convention in their countries. But under international law, all treaties are equal in strength to all other treaties. So when Pakistan and India signed an agreement in 2008, what they did was that they super exceeded the effect of the Vienna Convention itself. Now, the 2008 agreement, specifically Clause 6, states that in cases where arrest, detention, or sentence is made on political or security grounds, each side has to examine the case on its merits. The idea behind it was that in case a terrorist is detained by either Pakistan or India and belongs to either of the countries, then no consular access would be provided to him. And the idea behind this was that cross-border terrorism had been a major issue between India and Pakistan.
Right.
We've seen this happen so many times. And
so Ali, just to summarize it without going into the really sort of details of it. So consular access was agreed upon, especially regarding national security. And with reference to that, when India demands consular access and says it was denied, if we go back to the timeline of events, Pakistan did send a letter with specific requests to India and requested that the police cooperate in this investigation on Jadhav, and got a completely ominous, quiet response. Now, I'm talking about back in January 2017. Was this a missed opportunity for India, maybe, where they could have worked together with Pakistan and eventually gotten to some kind of middle ground in terms of consular access?
Absolutely, and not only once. Pakistan had made 13 attempts at access to information, which was held by India. It was refused every time. To see if investigation has to be taken up on the Kulbhushan Jadhav case, it has to be led on Pakistan.
So the opportunity was there. I'm sorry to cut you short. There's so many things to cover right now. So I'm coming back to you, Mr. Ghalib. Before we take a short break, we've got 30 seconds left. Why do you think India did not cooperate on those 13 times that Pakistan did reach out and try to get them to come on board in this investigation?
You get caught in a wrong act and you are trying to save your own people and your own skin. And they are even going to ditch the person if at some stage they feel so.
So, okay, so Brigadier Imran, what's your take on it?
I think if India had agreed to investigate the matter bilaterally with Pakistan, that would have established Kulbhushan Jadhav's guilt. Secondly, India has all along been saying that Kulbhushan Jadhav was never there in Pakistan. He was abducted from Chabahar. First, they thought that this was the line they took initially. Mm-hmm. Thereafter, then they said that he was abducted by the Taliban and then sold to Pakistan. So they have been changing their points of view and their stances all the time. So my basic point is that if they join an investigation with Pakistan that establishes the fact that Kulbhushan Jadhav has committed something, a crime, which needs to be investigated. And since India is investigating in cooperation with Pakistan, therefore, Kulbhushan Jadhav is an Indian national, an Indian naval officer, and that establishes Pakistan's point of view so well.
Right. So it would endorse it would endorse Pakistan's statements that he is, in fact, a Indian citizen in Pakistan illegally. But we'll continue this conversation right after this short break. Welcome back. You're watching Newswire. There has been an attack today on FC personnel in Balochistan. 4 FC personnel have been martyred by unidentified militants. Now, this has taken place on the route that CPEC is developing through Pakistan, and something in Balochistan we've seen a lot is that attacks are consistently rising in these areas against Pakistani forces, indicating that the BLA is even more active than before. Now, let me come back to you, Mr. Ali. We're talking about how India has failed to explain. One of the main sort of arguments in this case, which will be heard in the ICJ, is that why India has failed to explain when and why Kulbhushan retired, because there is an argument that Pakistan says he's a serving officer. India denies that he was a businessman, he was kidnapped. And also the fact that he had a fake name on an Indian-issued passport, which has been confirmed by independent UK-based, highly regarded independent experts that say this passport is authentic. So could you explain to us in the legal aspects of it, was this a sort of, him being in Pakistan on that passport was illegal, and also whether he was still a serving, did it make a difference that he was retired or a serving officer?
Absolutely. All of that goes to the merits of the case. Now, the general idea is that India is very weak on the merits of the case. The commander was serving in the Indian Navy. He was not traveling on a passport in his name. He was caught from within Pakistan. And the only win that India has had right now is the provisional measures that it has had taken. And that under Article 41, we need to realize, and everybody needs to know, that howsoever weak on the merits of the case a party may be, whether it is domestic courts or international courts, the jurisprudence has been that the matter should not turn infructuous, and that is the sole reason that India has been able to drag this case for so long. Now, when it comes up for a full hearing before the full court, and the Pakistani judge, the ad hoc Pakistani judge, would be there as well, which was a missed opportunity by us in the earlier provisional measures hearing, it would turn out how weak India's case is regarding this Kulbhushan Jadhav's passport and the false name. And if I could add just one more thing, that is that the Vienna Convention does not apply to unlawful visitors. This jurisprudence has been developed, and it does not apply to anybody that enters your house as a trespasser, as an illegal trespasser. So India is very weak on this case when it comes for a full hearing before the full court.
Very weak on this case, definitely. So thank you so much, Mr. On your input. Now coming to you, Mr. Ghalib, India has continuously said this point is irrelevant. It is mischievous propaganda regarding his identity, his passport. So why is then India asking for an order for return in the face of ICJ's decision and the independent experts' evidence confirming that Pakistan has effective review and reconsideration before the High Court and Supreme Court? They don't seem to consider that point at all.
See, India is not going to acknowledge at any stage that this person was an official spy sent by them to Pakistan to conduct the terrorist activities over here. They are going to treat him as an Indian national, and they are going to keep the interaction with the caught spy at that level. They are not going to go beyond that. Because we are fighting this case legally. India is trying to fight this case politically. So there is no meeting point between the two countries whereby you can say that we can arrive at certain decision or we can try to resolve this issue. There is nothing to resolve, number one, because we have caught a person, and it's not only Yadav who was caught. There are many others. You think others won't be working and operating in Pakistan at this time? There will be. What happened in Panjgur is probably one of these people who has done it. They are the people, they want to destabilize Pakistan. They want to destabilize at this particular moment for two reasons. Number one, of course, whatever is happening in ICJ. Number two is that Pakistan has arranged the meetings between the Taliban and the United States. And our position in Afghanistan is negotiation-wise pretty strong. When we come under international pressure and we start getting strong statements coming from the United States and the European countries and other countries, then obviously your position compromises a bit. This in Iran, in Indian-held Kashmir, 2 bomb blasts, suicide attacks, and we are going to ultimately be little more influential in negotiating our issues within Afghanistan. So this is one issue. And number two, as regards Commander Yadav, I think it is a very simple case. You cannot, I was earlier in another program and they were trying to compare it with the case of Raymond Davis. These are two different cases because Raymond Davis was an employee of the consulate of the United States in Lahore. And this person entered the country illegally. If he had not been a spy or if he had not been involved in these acts, the consular access would have been given to him immediately to the mission, Indian mission over here. This is a totally different case. You cannot treat this person like another ordinary Indian citizen entering Pakistan without a visa or entering Pakistan illegally. This has to be taken the way we have been pursuing the case. And I can tell you, in my diplomatic service, I can tell you very safely that Pakistan has been very, very
objective in their approach to how to deal with this prisoner. Let me bring in our fourth guest here. We have Brigadier Nadir Mir, who is joining us from Islamabad. He is the chairman of Pakistan National Reform Movement. Brigadier Nadir, just highlighting the sort of position that Pakistan is currently in the regional affairs, whether we are talking about Afghanistan or whether we are talking about their relations with China, as the China-Pakistan economic corridor continues to develop and billions are invested in the country. It is not just an economic boom to both countries. There is a lot of political military advantage. And here on the side, we see India battling its own demons. We're seeing them preparing for the general elections in a few months. Could you, in your opinion, or what do you see as this as critical timing, especially something which I found very interesting that Mr. Ghalib said, that India is fighting this politically while Pakistan approaches this as legally and objectively as it can?
Well, one has to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture includes what all you have said and a lot more also. Actually, Pakistan is on the winning side after almost 2 decades of facing mayhem, consternation, and so many upheavals. Basically, in Afghanistan, the Americans are leaving one way or the other, today or tomorrow or after 2 years, and Pakistan is a key actor in their exit strategy. That is one. As far as China is concerned, it's getting more entrenched into Gwadar, CPEC, and it's based on my book Gwadar on the global chessboard, and that's a game changer for Pakistan geoeconomically. And as you've just seen yourself, the Saudis are coming with an investment, and it's not just Saudis. It's the Saudis plus UAE because the GCC, they're coming in a big way. And also the Russians are linked into this whole affair of Gwadar, CPEC, and looking beyond Afghanistan. In fact, I talked to a Central Asian ambassador, and he, some time back, because of my book, Gwadar on the Global Chessboard, my first book, and he said that, they would link with, as soon as the Americans leave, they would link Central Asia with Gwadar. I mean, this is Central Asian or Russian view also, a land corridor just like CPEC or similar. So all this, if you see, and besides this, what is happening in India? Well, Indians have brutalized Kashmir for 71 years, mass rape, genocide, torture, whatnot, and after that, this incident, which means that all their security policies and what they tried has failed. And 2020 is coming up in Europe and all. And so overall, Pakistan's situation is becoming favorable, I would say. We shouldn't become complacent, but we are definitely improving in our security, national security and a regional environment compared to what it was yesterday. And we have things to do.
Okay.
And now coming on to this in the International Court of Justice at stake, you see, this person was not just a spy. He's a terrorist, a mastermind who was part of the Indian hybrid strategy, Gwadar, Baluchistan, responsible for 1,300 deaths in Pakistan or more. And so this whole, when you see this whole package, you would realize that this, as far as this person is concerned, Pakistan has taken the right stance and more vigorous. You just, it can't compare it with any other case. The 44 people or soldiers have died in India, and they've made right now there's a global campaign by India against Pakistan. And this person was responsible for 1,300 deaths in Pakistan. So it's high time Pakistani blood and Pakistani lives should be valued. And we have to do it. The world won't do it for us.
Right,
so
absolutely. Now, let me... Absolutely. Please. Now, bringing the kind of attention that it's getting from India, Pulwama incident, as terrible as it was, 40 CPF personnel lost their lives in this suicide attempt, the suicide attack. But one can't help but also sort of pay heed to the critics or the analysts who comment on how this is also a propaganda campaign by India, especially in terms of when they're traced back, whether we're talking about Samjhota Express, whether we're talking about incidents like the Mumbai attack, or in this case, we're watching Jadhav's case unfold in front of us with the strong evidence that Pakistan has versus what India has been quiet upon. In terms of what India itself proposes in terms of propaganda attacking its own people and then blaming Pakistan. Do you see any weightage in these claims? Has there been enough evidence to take this seriously?
No, I think we need to go a little into the history of India. See, Indian politicians, in particular Mr. Modi, they have been guilty of killing Indian nationals for their own political purposes. And let me please repeat this. They have been guilty of killing their own Indian nationals for their own political ends. Look at Gujarat, 2002, if I remember correctly. They killed almost 2,000 Muslims in Gujarat. And Mr. Modi was the chief minister there. But weren't those Indians Muslims not Indian nationals? So he is guilty of killing Indian nationals for his own political ends. They did this again when President Clinton was visiting India, and in Chhattisgarh,
but
he killed about 6.
Right. Hold that thought. Let me come back to you, Mr. Nadir, on the same question that I just proposed to to Brigadier Imran. Is that this whole agenda, is there an agenda? Is there enough weightage to comment that this could be an approach that India takes to slander Pakistan, especially at a time where BJP is faring very badly ahead of the elections?
You're absolutely right. It's part of that agenda, and it's in fact multifaceted. I mean, there are numerous factors which are weighing down on the Indian minds or the BJP. One is political that you have mentioned, that they need to win. And by the way, for all the talk of made in India in the last 5 years or so or whatever, they have shown nothing. Whatever. I don't want to comment on that because it's a waste of time. But whatever they have tried, mostly they failed. I'm talking about the Indian efforts at Made in India. And Modi's policy as such, Hindutva and marginalizing all other Indians, it's actually harmed India. I mean, of course, it doesn't because India acts as an enemy to us, but actually has harmed India more, than others could. This is one. And now they have to redeem that, and they have to win the election, and Congress and others are already questioning all this. So this is the political part, which you just mentioned, which could be weighing on this. Second is that India is following a consistent policy, and this is not just BJP or Mr. Modi, Indira Gandhi sent the army into Bangladesh, East Pakistan, then 1971. Nehru sent it in Kashmir, Srinagar, 1948. So India has a set agenda of aggrandizement, of hegemony, of dominance against Pakistan. This is part of that which is ongoing. So this is beyond. If tomorrow Modi is not there, somebody else will be doing the same thing in maybe another way. So this is on the second part, that Indians' confrontation policy with Pakistan. This is the second part. And thirdly, is India's own dismay and frustration, the mere fact that geopolitical grand design for the region has failed for so many reasons. And starting with Afghanistan, is unraveling. You see, India was launching a hybrid war from there against Pakistan, and that's going to become untenable as the Americans leave, because it was under an umbrella. And things are changing there.
Okay, and thank you so much, Nadir. Coming back to you, since we're running out of time, we're going to quickly race through these last few points. Mr. Ghalib, we've spoken about how Pakistan's regional importance is rising, and this it plays a threat on India's already crumbling BJP's political sort of dominance in the country. But let's come back to looking at this more objectively in terms of the judicial review that is available through Pakistan's High Court, through Pakistan's Supreme Court, of this military court process, because that is one thing that India has continuously criticized. As Brigadier Imran, you mentioned earlier, that they consider it a sham. So, Mr. Ghalib, do you think that when Jadhav's family, who had the option to request the Pakistani civilian courts to intervene, they didn't send an application through the Pakistani courts? What did that represent? Why did they not do that when that option was available?
I think they are going to regret it in the future, because that was one option which was probably a better option for the arrested person and also for the family. But I think the overriding effect in the whole process was probably the Indian position that the person is not an official of the country, and conveying to the world that we have not sent him, and that this person, whosoever he is on his own. Mm-hmm. Deep down they know that who the person is. Deep down we know who the person is. Our courts have already, the military court has already convicted him to death sentence. They should have gone to the civilian courts over here, to the High Court, to the Supreme Court. And I think probably still I don't see that there would have been any relief for the person, but that would have ensured that the family could have met him regularly, and the Indians would have also been able to get a consular access in due course.
Okay.
But they have opted for something. The family has opted for it because they were under pressure from the Indian government.
Pressure from the Indian government. With that, let me welcome our last guest on the show. General Mansha is joining us. He's an analyst. What is your take on the hearing of the Kulbhushan Jadhav that is to begin from tomorrow? Pakistan taking this case objectively, taking it posing legit legal concerns, and has enough evidence to fight its case, versus India. What is your understanding of how this has ended up in the ICJ?
So far, my very best regards to the other two speakers, Ambassador Ghalib and Brigadier Imran. They both are seniors, and they have much more enlightened views and more comprehensive view on the subject. But still, just to chip in, and as the ambassador was saying, there is a proven fact that the Kulbhushan Jadhav was an agent. He was committing and he was a serving the army officer, which is absolutely unprecedented in any espionage world. And it's a proven fact that he caused many damages. He caused terrorist acts, and that is to include upheavals in Karachi and in the entire Balochistan. And he was out there. That is to damage, that is CPAC, and to undo the Gwadar developments and all. And there is no denying that he has confessed it, and he has been legitimately and absolutely.
So, Brigadier, Major General Mansha, just for the lack of time, I'm sorry I have to cut you there, but trying to understand the larger picture here. If you were to go back in history and look at Samjhota Express and what happened, how Hindu extremists carried out the 2007 attack, are we to see a pattern? Are we to see something that is repeated continuously as the Indian propaganda towards Islamophobia, towards Pakistan? Could we see some similarity here, just reflecting on this case alone?
Absolutely. That is what has been happening, whether it was an attack on the Indian Parliament, be it that is the Uri attack, be it the plane hijack, be it the Bombay episode, and again this now Pulwama. That is what Indians, they have been trying, and they have been trying it since long, that is to malign Pakistan, and for no other reason but for their own doing. And but unfortunately, or fortunately for us, that is their false flag operations, those have so narrow, that is grounding. They do not have much of that is the convincing for the entire world. This
Right.
Episode.
Let me quickly come to you, Brigadier Imran, since we're running out of time. Continuous seen enough evidence, enough incidents taking place where these false flag operations have taken place. What is it with the world that they do not remember?
You see, India has it all very well covered. As I was mentioning earlier, they kill their own people, then they blame Pakistan for it, then they refuse international arbitration or an international investigation. For example, in this Pulwama incident, if the United Nations were to send a fact-finding mission, I think everything would become absolutely clear. It is 130 kilometers away from the line of control. How on earth could someone have carried 360 kilograms of explosive from there without being detected? Then if they've been able to do that, then I'm afraid the 500,000 Indian troops who are sitting there, yes, they're probably sleeping. So that is the point. They are doing the same thing in this Kulbhushan Jadhav case. They are guilty of a crime. They have launched a spy mission into Pakistan, and now they are blaming Pakistan that we are not allowing them consular access.
Right.
Instead of saying that the crime has been committed, they are putting the onus now on Pakistan to give them consular access. So the main issue is always sidetracked.
Right.
As you said, they carry out a great deal of propaganda. They deceive not only the international opinion, but international diplomats as well. And that is how they try to bring Pakistan under pressure. But I think now the game is up.
The game is up. In optimistic note, we come to the end of the show with a lot of valuable input from all our esteemed guests. I want to thank all of you, Major General Mansha, Mr. Ali Tahir, Brigadier Imran, and Mr. Ghalib Iqbal. We've got different point of views here, whether or not India is on an agenda, and if there was, like you mentioned, international arbitration or investigation allowed into these incidents where India is coming out very confidently blaming Pakistan for it, calling Pakistan synonymous to terrorism, then we would be able to see in clarity what the truth is. But unfortunately, we can't get into more details. We will keep you up to date with the hearing and the findings in the ICJ on this case and more news. Stay tuned to Indus News. That's all for now from the Newswire.